So I'm going to load up a new cylinder. This time setting the height only to about 448, but setting the outer radius up to 640. Now, or let me accidentally had that brush selected. Let me just hit Control-Z to undo that and move my Antiportal back. Select the Builder brush, move this over, and kind of center it up on this area. Maybe somewhere about there. Let me check a front view and make sure I move it outside of the underground area, just above where everything was subtracted. Maybe do about there. Let me actually go in this area to make sure. Wouldn't hurt to move it up just a little bit. Maybe just above the addition.
Now, you mentioned earlier that an antiportal needs to be at least touching the subtracted space of a level. Does that count for terrain as well?
Terrain? What do you mean for just terrain?
Well, I mean, does it have? Can you actually have your antiportal buried completely underneath your terrain?
Oh yeah, terrain's presence doesn't have any real bearing on how the antiportal works, really. Because think about it, this entire section here, if we turn everything off, including terrain, let me turn BSP back on, but really, it's a giant cube.
Okay.
All the way around.
Just making sure.
The whole area that we're working with is a subtracted area. It's just the area underneath the terrain. I mean, it's still the cube. It's just players normally don't go there. It's not like it's unsubtracted world or anything.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely something to point out, the fact that the terrain basically is floating in a giant cube.
Okay, cool.
So with that, let me check a few more angles on this brush before I edit in. As a matter of fact, I might have to vertex edit it a little bit. Make sure it's fitting. For example, this end is getting kind of close. You might not be able to get into it, but better to be a little bit safe. So I'll go back into vertex editing mode and grab maybe the sides, drag those in a little bit. So to pull that back from the edge, maybe go to the other side. That's actually not too bad there. I might just leave that alone as is. Again, when testing the level, you want to make sure you're aware of where the anti-portals are. Make sure that obviously, no parts sticking out into the level where you could accidentally get into it.
Okay.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and add this as an antiportal as well. The only thing is it's not quite... There's almost like a wall of rock a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is maybe add in another plane, a little bit shorter this time, but just kind of to span the gap between the antiportal that we had over here and across this face. So we have more of a whole plane of stuff hidden.
Okay.
This differs a little bit from the original Antilus, but just different approaches you might want to take or try when placing antiportals. So let me load up the sheet builder and change it to maybe a Y-axis brush. Set the height to maybe 1024 again. Actually, I'll start out with 448, as I do have to... I'm a little worried about not going underneath here, so we don't actually block out something you want to see.
Right.
And maybe up the width to about 1024. Actually, let's get a little crazy. All the way up to 2048.
That is pretty big.
So now, let me see if I can just kind of move this in a little bit. And yeah, it's kind of inefficient. It's not going to cause an actual problem to cross the antiportals like this, but you might want to look at maybe repositioning this one, pulling the vertices back so it's out of the way, or even, let's see, looking at this from different angles. Let's see. For the time being, though, I don't really need to pull that in just yet. But to clean it up, you might want to take all the vertices, line them in on the inside of this one.
Okay.
Again, just kind of deciding on the fly exactly how all this stuff should be positioned.
Right.
But let me take the sheet, make sure that it is below the level and contained within the terrain. That's actually not too bad right there.
Yeah, it looks pretty good to me.
Still looking in some other views. Again, in a final level, you'd want to make sure you test every single extent, but this by itself should work okay.
It should be enough to get the point across.
So let me add that in just so that we have a wider panoramic strip that's going to be blocked out by the antiportal. Now, one more area I want to take a look at is, again, this giant cliff here, pretty much. So I'm going to start out with a cube, just a regular 256 cube. I'm also going to turn static meshes back on so I can see where I'm working. And the wall I'm looking at is across here. If you're wondering where anything is, you can just select in the perspective where it's easier to see, and okay, there's the center rock. As a matter of fact, I could select all of those. There's the wall I'm looking at, throwing the antiportal inside.
Okay, very cool.
So let me just go back out into space and select nothing. That way, when I control left drag, I'm dragging the builder cube.
Awesome.
And let me just drag it kind of the edge of that one large boulder, rotate it out a little. And let's see, turn static meshes back on here as well. Let me see what the exact height of this is, all the way up there. So for the height of this cube, let me up it all the way up to 2048. Again, I'm going to let it extend below the level. So we need to lower it down quite a bit. So let me reselect it. Not too much, just maybe down to there. And the other thing is that players generally won't get up this high that easily, so I'm going to keep it well within the height of these boulders.
Okay.
So now that I have that positioned roughly where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and rotate it and then do a little bit more vertex editing so I can stretch this out some. So I'll hold Control Alt, left drag, and grab those two vertices and simply drag them out to the edge of this boulder, or at least the part that's for sure within the static mesh.
Right.
So with all that in place, that makes quite a decent wall across all that. Let me check the other edge. So, yeah, I might actually pull it in just a little on the safe side. So with that, I'll add this in. And let's see. For testing purposes, since, well, the rebuild time on this shouldn't be too bad. I'm not going to worry about lighting, so I'm going to rebuild geometry and everything. And with that, let's see how it's looking so far.
Okay, cool.
Again, it's really kind of taking a look at the level and seeing what shapes are in the level could be simplified into more of a primitive, meaning that that primitive could then be made into an antiportal, and there you go, you have part of your level occluding. So, actually starting right here after our first antiportal, let me activate R Mode 1 wireframe, and check that out. As we walk up to that, there's decent chunks of the level off in the distance disappearing. Of course, some of the closer terrain isn't as it's in view where it's closer to me, but it is easy now for chunks of the level to be completely occluded and therefore stop drawing. Also, if I look towards the center now, and if I jump a little, it's hard to tell, but off in the distance, things are disappearing. It's just a little bit tricky with the way this is set up. Maybe a bit of zoning.
Well, we do clearly have some optimization going on.
Yes, definitely. And now if we look back at the big one where I was on the one corner looking through the cliff, check that already. We have giant chunks of the map disappearing in the drawing, which makes sense. That is one big cliff wall there.
Right,
so,
major difference here.
So this is this would be a major improvement in speed, as there's far less that the engine has to render.
Very cool.
So I mean, with that pretty much wraps, or at least outlines, how you go into a finished level and start setting up antiportals for optimization.
Right, you just continue this from here on out. Take a look at objects that kind of jut into your level, that occlude various parts of it, that don't necessarily, allow you to zone things out, because, most of Antilles is one giant arena. So zoning really wouldn't help us out too much. So in this case, we use a series of antiportals.
Except in that one little cave type area. But for the entire rest of the level, it's all one outdoor arena. But there are large objects that block off the rest of the level in many, many cases.
Sure. So I guess it's going to pretty much wrap it up for this lesson. So thanks a lot.